Okay, Algebra 8. We are moving on to section 4.2, integer exponents. So just remember that an integer is just a positive or a negative number. So that means that today when we look at exponents, some of them are going to be negative. So the first thing that I want to do is just kind of talk about, well, what does it mean to have an exponent? And we did this in the lesson previously. And the exponent tells us how many times the base is multiplied by itself. So this is 10 times 10, which would be 100. And then we have just one 10, and that's just 10. And then if we have 10 to the 0, remember anything to the 0 power, it doesn't matter what that is just 1. Okay? So I want you to look at what's happening here. So we went from 100, and then we go to 10, and then we go to 1. And so what's actually occurring here is as the exponents goes down, as the exponents go this way, you're multiplying by a 10. But and maybe I'll put like a dot here, and then as they go this way though, we're gonna be dividing by a 10. So this one, from here to here was a dividing by a 10. From here to here, it was a dividing by a 10. So what's going to happen when we go from, 1, 10 to the 0 to 10 to the negative 1, what's going to happen is we're going to divide by that 10 again. So this is going to look like 1 divided by 10, and we're going to write it like this, just 1 over 10. Well, this one now, we have 1 divided by 10, and then divided by 10 again, and it looks like this. So it's like you're dividing by that 10 twice. So this is actually really 1 divided by 100. And then here, we're going to do to the third. And so this looks like this. Now, as decimals, I'm going to express these as decimals so we can see them. That's going to help us do these next problems. This is going to be 0.1. This is going to be 0.01. And then this one is 0.001. In the thousandths, in the hundredths, in the tenths. Okay. So we can use this pattern to simplify the exponents here. It gets kind of confusing because we remember this like we do scientific notation, but here's the key. You start with a 1, and then we're going to move it this number of times, and you're going to have this many of decimal places. So like here we had 3 decimal places, here we had 2 decimal places, here we had 1. So this one is going to have, maybe I should even write that, I should start here. We're going to have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this was 1, 2, 3, 4. This one's going to have 5. And that first 0 doesn't count. It's decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This number is always a 1 in these cases. And this one we're going to have 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's not zeros, but decimal places. So the negative exponent tells you how many decimal places the number has, and this including the 0 and the 1s, the 1. Okay. So then we can apply this to numbers other than 10 as well, and it's actually very interesting. So it says any non-zero number raised to a negative power equals 1 divided by that number raised to the power. So basically what you do is instead of having this in the top, you just put it in the bottom when it's negative. And then you can do 5 times 5 times 5 and you get 125. So here, I like to do these in 2 steps. So we're going to have 1 over 6 to the 4th, 1 divided by 6 to the 4th, and then we're going to actually do 6 to the 4th. So 6 times 6 times 6 times 6. And remember, you can use calculators on these, but you need to express your answer in a fraction. So I don't really care if you can take 6 times 6 times 6 times 6. We can do that, 6 times 6 times 6 times 6, but you need to write your answer like this. If you put a negative exponent just into the calculator, it will give you a decimal. So I need you to express it like this. So this one is going to be 1 divided by negative 2 to the 3rd. Notice my exponent went to the positive. So 1 over 1 divided by negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. So this is 1 divided by, and it stays underneath there. Negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Positive 4 times negative 2 is a negative 8. And there's your answer there. Last one, 1 over 4 to the 2nd. So my exponent becomes positive when I move it to the bottom. Notice none of my, this doesn't make my answer negative. If it was negative, then I might have a negative answer. And this is 4 times 4, because it's 4 squared. 4 times 4 is 16. So it's just 1/16. So negative exponents are small numbers. So remember, a negative exponent does not mean a negative number. Negative exponents mean small numbers. There's a difference there, not negative numbers, but small numbers. So the last type of thing here is that 0 power, anything to the 0. Power equals 1. So just remember that. So sometimes these problems, they might try to trick you and look like they're really complicated, but they actually simplify really nicely. So order of operations tells you you always do what's inside the parentheses first, then you do the exponents. So I'm going to start there. 4 plus 2 is 6. So this is 6 to the negative 2nd. Anything to the 0 is 1, so I'm just going to change that to a 1 right away. So then I'm going to do the exponent. This is 1 over 6 times 6, which is 36. So this problem turns into 2 plus 1 minus 136. You guys can use a calculator to do these, that's fine. 2 plus 1 is 3. I'm just going to move this over. So 3 minus 136 equals 2 and 35, 36. So a lot of times they make them so you can kind of, if you took 1 away from the whole, you'd have 35 left. They make them so you can kind of do them in your head. Okay, the next one, we do what's inside the parentheses first. So I would take that 6 minus 4. 6 minus 4 is 2. Remember, anything to the 0 is 1. So a lot of times I just take that and do that right away. So this one, though, is going to be 1 divided by 2 to the 3rd. Okay, so 2 to the 3rd, that's 2 times 2 times 2. So that would be 5 minus 1. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, plus 1. So then I'm just going to remind you, remember you work order of operations, you always work left to right. So 5 minus 1/8. Well, if you had 5 wholes and you take away 1/8, you're going to have 4 and 7/8. And then you're just going to add 1. So that gives us 5 and 7/8. Okay, that's it for section 4-2.